Welcome to the Daggerheart Arena, where multiple character builds battle it out to become the champion. Daggerheart released two new classes for playtesting, the Fighter and the Warlock. So what better way to try them out than throwing them in the arena? Let's check out the contestants. The Fighter's class features allow powerful unarmed strikes that can stack bonus damage using Combo Strike. Of course, I chose the Martial Arts subclass that provides a certain effect depending on the combat stance you are using. The two domain skills are Untouchable and I See It Coming, increasing the fighter's defensive capabilities. With this build, he has 15 evasion, and can increase that against ranged attacks. The fighter on Team Red will have the same build, except replacing I See It Coming with Bare Bones, making the Team Red fighter more tanky, but loses 1 evasion. The Warlock class features basically give more experiences with a different resource. I chose Pact of the Wrathful subclass, that can reroll attacks and deal stress. The two domain skills are Blight Strike and Voice of Dread, providing good debuffs. Voice of Dread combos nicely with the subclass, potentially dealing 2 stress on attack, preventing the opponent from using their abilities often. The Warlock on Team Red will have the same build, except replacing Voice of Dread with Inspirational Words. Here are the arena rules. Each character starts with max hope and stress. Warlock will start with 3 favor. Once a character has 0 HP, they are eliminated. One character can take multiple turns as long as they succeed with hope, so if there's only one character on the team, they can keep attacking. And if someone needs to roll an agility to get to an area, they can also attack right after. To simulate GM moves, characters can spend a hope to take an action immediately after an opponent succeeds with hope. Players can spend a hope to clear one of their conditions, and still take their turn normally. In a regular campaign, GMs can spend a fear in combat to immediately take a turn after a player. They can also spend a fear to clear a condition on an adversary, but it also ends the adversary's turn in doing so. Let the battle begin. Team Blue versus Team Red. Alright, Team Red rolled higher, so they get the first move. Both Warlocks have the ability to fly, flavored as a jetpack, so you will activate that and fly 10 feet into the air, and take cover behind this rock. The small rocks are 10 feet tall, while the 3 larger rocks are 15 feet tall. Red Fighter will take cover behind the rock, and use stress to gain focus points to activate defensive stance. So all attacks against the Red Fighter have disadvantage. Blue teams on the bottom, I'm just going to call them Fighter and Warlock, while the red team on the top, I'll call them Red Fighter and Red Warlock. Obviously it's the ones with the red dot on them. The fighter will also activate defensive stance. Gonna dash forward, and since it's more than 30 feet, he has to make an agility roll. Alright, and it passes, but it's with fear, so the turn goes back to the red team. Fighter 2 is gonna run in with a flying dragon kick. Ooh, and that's a crit! First attack of the game! On critical successes, you also gain a hope and clear a stress. On critical attacks, you roll normal damage, plus the maximum of your damage die. So since the damage die on the attack is a d10, the attack does plus 10 on top of whatever I rolled, for a total of 12 damage. The fighter uses an armor, and loses 2 HP. Even in defensive stance, the hit automatically succeeds, so it doesn't have to roll disadvantage. And on top of that, Red Fighter will spend 3 hope to apply Stagger Strike on that hit, which deals 1 stress and the enemy attacks have disadvantage until it clears the stagger condition. With that attack, it's still Red Team's turn. However, the Warlock will spend a hope to interrupt and take its turn immediately. Remember, this is simulating GM moves, since GMs can spend a fear to interrupt players and take an adversary turn immediately. The Warlock will activate his jetpack, flying 10 feet into the air. Part of his back armor pops out and slides over his right shoulder, turning into a laser gun, and shoots a beam at the Red Fighter, using the skill Voice of Dread, which if it hits, will cause him to lose 1 stress and be temporarily vulnerable, which means all attacks on that target will have advantage. Since Red Fighter is in defensive stance, the attack does have disadvantage unless the attacker spends a stress. And that's what the Warlock will do. And the attack hits. Red Warlock is going to stick both his arms out as cannons pop out of his forearm armor, and shoots a blight strike at the fighter. Damn, it misses. Alright, he's going to use Death Herald. Spend a favor to reroll the attack. Damn, still misses. Unfortunately, when the player misses using the Death Herald ability, the player loses a stress. Because he misses, the turn goes to Team Blue. Fighter will use a hope to clear the stagger condition. Again, this is to simulate another GM move, since GMs can spend a fear to clear an adversary condition. However, in the arena, players can take a turn right after they clear a condition. The fighter's gonna do a quick jab to the one in front of it. We'll also apply Stagger Strike. Red Fighter uses an armor and takes no damage. Red Warlock will intercept with a Blight Strike. That's a 23 with Fear. When Blight Strike hits with Fear, the damage die becomes D10 instead. We'll use an armor and lose 1 HP. The roll was with Fear, so the turn goes back to Blue Team. The fighter will attack with an uppercut. And since he was hit with Blight Strike, his damage is reduced by 1d6 the next time he hit an ally, which means the red fighter takes no damage this attack. Defensive stance would have made the attack at disadvantage, but since the enemy is vulnerable, that means attacks have advantage, so it cancels out, and the roll is normal. We'll use a hope to clear the stagger condition. Red fighter will counterattack with a jab, but a 9 misses. The Warlock will keep the laser gun on stun mode and shoot another beam at the red fighter, using Voice of Dread. Red Warlock will attack with a Blight Strike, and will roll disadvantage because the fighter's in defensive stance. Now the fighter will use the skill, I See It Coming, increase his evasion to 18, making that attack a miss. He quickly turns using his momentum to jab, but it misses. The other fighter counterattacks with his own Dragon Fist, and also misses. These two are having a real kung fu showdown in the middle. The Warlock will aim his arm cannons at the red fighter and use Blight Strike. 21 hits. He will also use Energy Drain. When he rolls with hope, he can deal stress instead of gaining that hope. Red fighter uses an armor and takes no damage. Red Warlock will interrupt with his own Blight Strike. "21 hits. Since that was Fear, it rolls a d10 damage die, for 4 damage. The fighter is still in defensive stance, so the attacker loses a stress instead of rolling with disadvantage. Fighter uses an armor and takes no damage. Alright, I want to start messing with other stuff. So the fighter spends a stress to equip Rope Dart, which is the weapon Scorpion uses when he says, "Get over here!" It is a flavored grappler, but it misses. Red fighter will do the same thing and throw a rope dart. That also misses. Warlock will fly in front of his ally, still 10 feet in the air so he doesn't get melee attacked. Aim his laser gun, and use Voice of Dread. Alright, he's gonna use Death Herald. Spend a favor to reroll the attack. That hits. Another energy drain, so this combo dealt 2 stress and made the opponent vulnerable. The red Warlock intercepts, flies down and shoots a Blight Strike. But it misses. The fighter dodges out of the way and throws a rope dart, trying to drag red Warlock to the ground. And that hits. So when the rope dart hits, it drags the target into melee range.
Get over here!
Will lose an armor and take no damage. Since the roll was with fear, the turn switches to red team. And the red fighter's gonna run in with a flying kick. And I'm also gonna apply Combo Strike. This is the fighter's class feature. You keep rolling d4s until the current roll is lower than the previous roll. Then you add the total together and it becomes bonus damage to that attack. Woo! Let's go! None of these numbers is lower than the previous, so I keep rolling. It's supposed to simulate multiple attacks at once. And the combo ends at the 2. So now I add up all the previous rolls. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 14. That is 19 total damage in one attack. And since the fighter has no armor left, that's going to be severe damage. Loses 3 HP, and it is eliminated. The Warlock will interrupt, as blades unsheath from its forearm armor. Shing! And it's gonna slash at the fighter. It would also use a stress to hit a second target. This is a flavored rapier. Because the roll is high, I'm just gonna roll with disadvantage, because of defensive stance. And it still hits. I will also use Energy Drain, to deal stress instead of taking that hope. When you have 0 stress and are forced to mark another one, you lose HP instead. The red fighter's major threshold is 10, so he'll use an armor to take no damage. The red Warlock will also use armor, and loses 1 HP. Red Warlock's gonna interrupt, with a Blight Strike. That hits. Will also use Energy Drain. Will use an armor and takes no damage. Then clears 2 stress on red fighter by using inspirational words, spending both tokens. While he's distracted, red fighter will attack from behind. And I'm also gonna apply Combo Strike. 2 is less than 3, so 2 plus 3 plus 6 is 11 total damage. We'll use an armor and lose 1 HP. Warlock will aim his arm cannons at red fighter for a Blight Strike. Misses. Red Warlock will use his own Blight Strike against Warlock. Death Herald to reroll. And it hits. Will use an armor and takes no damage. Energy drain. Warlock uses his laser gun for Voice of Dread. It will use Death Herald to re-roll that attack. Red Fighter is still vulnerable, so the roll is normal. Energy drain. Red Fighter uses Rope Dart to bring Warlock to the ground. And as he's dragged in, will be hit with a spinning kick to apply Stagger Strike. Will use an armor and takes no damage. Warlock takes advantage of Red Fighter having low stress and uses Voice of Dread. And lose 1 HP. Blight Strike. Energy drain. No more armor left. Voice of Dread. Critical hit! This ability doesn't have a damage roll, so he just gains a hope and clears the stress. Energy drain. Red Fighter rope darts Warlock, keeping him grounded. No more armor left. Voice of Dread misses. Death Herald reroll. Still misses. Red Warlock flies in. Hits. And since it was with fear, the damage is a d8 dice, for a total of 8 damage. Warlock's major threshold is 8, so he loses 2 HP. Counter strikes at Red Fighter, trying to eliminate him. Hits. They are eliminated, and it's now 1-on-1. Warlock succeeded with hope, so his turn continues. Releases his arm blade for a slash attack. Energy drain. Red Warlock uses an armor and takes no damage. One character can take multiple turns as long as they succeed with hope. And it goes over the opponent's head, then interrupts with his arm blade. And that slices his chest for the game. Red team wins. Alright, from this playtest, 15 evasion on the fighter is pretty good. And defensive stance on top of that, fighter's gonna be hard to hit. And it's okay to focus the build defensively, since combo strike is great offensively on its own. That is a cool mechanic, simulating multiple attacks at once. Martial arts subclass has good variety. Other than defensive stance, you can restrain a target, increase your chances of dealing high damage, increase your accuracy, or attack 2 targets at once. For the Warlock, in a campaign, favor feels too limited. you can only recharge it on a long rest, and must use a rest option to do so. It's a 1d4 roll, so if you roll a 1, you just wasted a rest when you could have cleared all your armor, or all your stress. There needs to be more ways of gaining favor, like spend 2 or 3 hope to gain a favor. Or if you roll with hope on an action roll that uses a favor, you can gain a favor instead of gaining that hope. Other than that, I like Voice of Dread, great crowd control, giving your allies advantage on a target. The Pact of the Wrathful subclass is awesome. You've seen how many times I used Energy Drain and Death Herald. Overall, the series is fun to make, so if you want more Daggerheart Arena episodes, make sure you comment below. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and until next time, peace.